Okay, let's unpack this. We're
No.
diving deep today into a trend that's really taking hold, especially with younger generations: mindfulness and meditation.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And we've got a couple of really interesting sources to guide us. There's one article that kind of zooms out, gives us the big picture, the stats, particularly for millennials and Gen Z.
Right.
And then we also have this really insightful personal account, someone sharing their, very honest journey with meditation.
Okay, so our mission here is to figure out what these sources are telling us about why these practices are hitting home so much with younger people right now. And what does their approach to well-being actually look like? What's driving this?
Well, the context the sources give us is really key here. They definitely paint a picture of millennials and Gen Z facing, well, pretty significant pressures,
Yeah.
describing them as like particularly prone to burnout and anxiety.
You can totally see that. I mean, think about it. Stressful jobs, right?
Yeah,
Then there's the constant comparison you get from social media, all those seemingly flawless influencers,
exactly.
and just, general social pressure. One source even calls it a more insecure environment. Makes you constantly wonder if you're measuring up.
Right. And what's interesting, the sources point out, is that even though they're navigating all this stuff, these generations are actively turning towards practices like mindfulness and meditation.
Yeah.
It's not just like a passive thing. They seem to recognize the potential for real long-term benefits, seeing these as tools, really, essential tools for coping, for building resilience.
And what's really striking, I think, is how this ties into a bigger shift, right? In how these generations actually see and talk about mental health.
Absolutely. The sources definitely indicate a big move away from the old taboo.
Yeah.
Millennials and Gen Z, they're just far more likely to talk openly about struggles
Yeah.
and to actively seek help. It's becoming, well, normalized.
And the data. One source had the survey finding that, get this, 64% of millennials practice dedicated activities specifically for mindfulness.
Wow, 64%.
Yeah, huge number. And that includes, yoga, journaling, using apps, and of course, meditation. That stat alone feels like a pretty seismic shift, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It suggests a much more proactive approach to mental well-being, maybe in a way previous generations weren't quite as equipped or even comfortable doing.
So let's dig into what mindfulness actually is, according to these sources. It's framed as this really powerful method for connecting your physical self with your mental self.
Precisely. And the purpose, as they describe it, is basically to cultivate greater resilience, inner strength,
Mm-hmm.
reducing stress along the way. It helps you handle the everyday stuff, the challenges, by creating this sort of secure inner space.
And the sources mention it's inspired by the Buddhist tradition of meditation, right? The core idea being reflection on your inner thoughts, your feelings.
Which then leads to greater awareness. And the idea is the more aware you become of what's going on inside, the better you can understand it, make better judgments about, how to respond to things happening outside. And ultimately manage stress more effectively. It's really fundamentally about being present.
Now, that personal account we mentioned, it dives right into meditation and has some really clear points, especially about what meditation isn't.
Oh, yeah. This source is super direct, cuts through a lot of the noise. It basically says, look, meditation is definitely not woo biology.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't have to be spiritual, and you're certainly not trying to, open a third eye or anything like that.
Good to know.
Yeah.
So if it's not that stuff, what is it? According to this personal take.
Well, it describes meditation as a practice to simply see your own thoughts. Just observe them.
Right.
Learn to be okay with them being there, and then kind of let them pass. It's not going to magically fix your external problems, right?
Right.
But the real power, it suggests, is giving you that internal strength, that mental space you need to actually approach and solve those problems yourself.
And the example they give makes it really concrete. Like, you'll still get angry if someone's genuinely annoying you,
Oh, yeah.
but the reason for the anger is different. It's coming from that actual trigger, not from all this, unresolved internal stuff bubbling up that the practice has helped you clear out. That feels like a really key distinction.
Definitely. And building on that, the personal account goes into the specific, really tangible benefits of mindfulness meditation, which was the type that author eventually found worked best for them.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, linking it back to the brain. Benefit number one, improves the connection with your rational brain, the prefrontal cortex.
Yes. And it does this, the source explains, by helping to quiet down the amygdala.
Ah, the emotion center.
Exactly. Your brain's alarm system triggers fight or flight. And the thing is, it doesn't really know the difference between, say, a tiger chasing you and a stressful email landing in your inbox.
Right. It just sounds the alarm.
It just sounds the alarm, and when it's firing off, it can kind of hijack your ability to think logically. So the source explains that by practicing meditation, you get better at choosing a rational response, even when you feel stressed or threatened.
Ah, okay. So it's not about stopping the emotion, but giving your thinking brain a beat to step in before the alarm completely takes over. Makes sense. What's benefit two?
Creating space. The practice helps you just sit with feelings, sit with thoughts, without immediately reacting or trying to shove them away. And this apparently provides immense clarity. The source uses this great metaphor, like unraveling knots in a tangled thread, so you can see things as they actually are.
I like that.
And the author really stresses this point they learned the hard way. The more you fight thoughts, the more they just stick around.
So it's about acceptance, not trying to avoid things, which connects to benefit three, right? Processing thoughts and feelings instead of burying them.
Exactly. The source says burying them is what can lead to those breakdowns the author actually experienced.
Yeah.
And look, it can be uncomfortable facing that stuff, but bringing it up, processing it, that's necessary for healing.
Right. It's like cleaning out a wound.
Precisely. And that leads straight into benefit four. Mindfulness meditation helps you slow down and actively heal anxiety, not just cope with it temporarily.
That's a big one. Heal, not just cope.
Yeah. The author says, look, I still feel anxious sometimes. That's human. But now they feel like they have tools to actually address and heal the root causes, which is, a pretty powerful shift.
Okay, moving on to another key point from the sources I definitely have to talk about technology's role here, especially apps.
Oh, for sure. They're presented as a huge factor driving this whole trend, mostly because they offer a really cost-effective solution, right?
Right.
And incredibly time-efficient, especially when you compare it to, say, the cost and time commitment of traditional therapy.
And for generations that are basically glued to their phones anyway, the convenience factor is massive. You can literally do a 5-minute guided session while you're walking the dog.
Or on your commute.
Yeah.
It just makes it so accessible, democratizes it, really. The sources even mention specific apps, like Insight Timer says it has over 60,000 free guided sessions.
Wow, free.
Yeah. And Calm, which offers meditations, mindfulness exercises, even bedtime stories to help with sleep.
So these apps aren't just like passive tools. They've kind of helped create this whole trend by making these pretty powerful techniques available right there. Comfort of your own home. Privacy.
Exactly. But while tech makes it easy to start, that personal journey source is really honest about the fact that starting meditation isn't always, smooth sailing.
Right.
For the author, it actually made things worse at first because they were trying a practice that just wasn't the right fit for them.
That feels like such a critical point for anyone listening who might be thinking about trying it. It's easy to hit that wall and just stop, right?
Totally.
So what does the source say is important if you run into that?
Research and persistence. The author really hammers this home. There's no single right way to meditate. They found out there are loads of different types. Actually lists 9 examples like spiritual, focused movement, mantra, transcendental, progressive relaxation, loving kindness, visualization, and mindfulness meditation.
So lots of options.
Yeah. And their own breakthrough came kind of unexpectedly. They watched a Netflix show, The Mind Explained.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
And it featured this Tibetan monk talking about how mindfulness meditation helped him with severe anxiety. That led the author to try guided meditations, specifically by Sam Harris, who's a neuroscientist.
Interesting combination.
Right. And that method finally clicked for them. So it really underlines that need to experiment and find what works for you.
Okay. And we should probably loop back quickly to social media. We mentioned it as a stressor.
Right. The comparison trap.
Yeah. But it's got that duality, doesn't
Yeah.
it? One source points that out.
It does. While it can definitely fuel that pressure cooker feeling, the sources also bring up the other side. The American Psychological Association, for instance, found that 55% of Gen Z actually feel supported through social media.
Huh. Okay, so it's not all bad. It can be a source of connection, support too.
Seems like it. It really comes down to knowing how to curate your feed, how to filter the content, right? To avoid getting sucked into that dark side.
Makes sense. Okay, so bringing this all together for you listening, The sources paint a pretty clear picture, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Mindfulness and meditation are really trending with millennials and Gen Z largely because they're actively looking for tools to navigate what feels like a particularly stressful, maybe anxiety-inducing environment.
And they're part of this generation that's just way more open about
Yeah.
mental health, right? You're destigmatizing the whole conversation, actively seeking help.
Uh-huh. And the sources give us these really powerful practical benefits like improving that connection between our rational and emotional brain.
Or the amygdala thing.
Yeah, providing space to actually process thoughts and feelings instead of just burying them, offering tools for genuine healing from anxiety, not just sort of papering over the cracks.
And finally, technology. Especially those apps, they're just making these practices super convenient, affordable, and widespread. It's fundamentally changing how these generations are approaching their well-being.
Absolutely. And well, that leaves us with a final thought for you to chew on, drawn directly from the material we've discussed today.
Okay, let's hear it.
If technology, phones, social media, the internet can be both a significant source of the stress and anxiety these generations are grappling with,
Right.
and at the same time, through things like apps and online resources, be the main gateway to accessing the very practices that help heal that stress. What does that really suggest about the future of well-being? Especially in this, super hyper-connected world we're all living in.